Oh, how I've missed talking to you about the Resident Evil franchise. That's right, it's time for everyone's favorite seasonal series here, R.E. Ween. God, that's an awful name. It's been a whole year and we still haven't thought of anything better. How would I know, man? I'm a cutaway character. But probably, yeah, you procrastinate a lot. But if this is your first time tuning into the series, you can find the entire playlist of the whole series I've done linked in the description below the subscribe button. Or skip that and just watch this one, because we're going back to the beginning. Or before the beginning. Roll the intro thing, it's Resident Evil 0. I just feel like I should get this part out of the way now because you may notice I'm not playing the original 2002 GameCube release. And I don't want to catch a bunch of comments about not playing the original like I have for the rest of the series up to this point. For this video, I'll be playing the 2016 Xbox One HD remaster, because outside of better graphics and load times and controls that are actually functional, it's the exact same in every way. And this way I can get achievements while I'm doing it too. But the original version was released just 6 months after the iconic Resident Evil 1 remake from 2002, with both games releasing exclusively on the Nintendo GameCube. But the origin of this origin story goes all the way back to the previous console, the Nintendo 64. But not just the Nintendo 64, but instead the wildly underperforming floppy disk player peripheral for the console, the 64DD. That DD stands for disk drive, not the doodad. But if they called it the 64 doodad, it probably would have sold a lot better. That's a way cooler name. During the development of the original Resident Evil, the idea came up for a prequel on the 64DD. But after the poor sales numbers of the DD 4 years down the road, the prequel game started development alongside other Resident Evil titles like Resident Evil 3 and Code Veronica, but this time as a cartridge-based game. The game was later moved onto the GameCube due to memory limitations of the Nintendo 64, and the majority of the game was remade, except for the story, which is why you see the train location appearing on both versions, because the location was already written into the story. Eventually, after a long development, the game was released on the Purple Square to a kind of a meh reception. Nobody really hated Zero, at least not by Resident Evil standards. Have you ever heard of a game called Umbrella Corps? We're miles ahead of that. But I do like to start these off with my personal history with the game, but I had a little better transition to go right into that background stuff, so I just went ahead and did that first. And that's kind of a good thing, because I honestly don't have a whole lot of experience with Resident Evil 0. I bought it a long time ago on sale and then kept forgetting about it. I'd play it here and there and then get pulled in another direction. But that's just because of my ADD brain, not because this game is meh. I actually kind of think this game is not meh, but I don't have a segue for getting to why, so... Resident Evil 0 actually takes place just one day before the Spencer Mansion incident that we experienced in the first game. And it follows returning character? I don't know if you consider a character returning if it's in the sequel, but we've seen her before. It's Rebecca Chambers. Yes, I'm talking about that often defenseless companion to Chris Redfield in the original game. She experienced an entire game before that. Along with series newcomer and in true Resident Evil fashion, this would be his one and only appearance, Billy Cohen. Real quick, while we're talking about the appearance of Billy Cohen, I just want to stop and talk about Billy Cohen's appearance. This is without a doubt the stupidest looking character in all of Resident Evil. And that's competing with a 4-foot tall 20-year-old with the face of a 90-year-old that dresses like a Spanish nobleman. We'll get to that tomorrow. But Billy's got that whole vote for Pedro pencil thin mustache going on, and the long mullet that's somehow both spiky and flowing long in the back at the same time. The high-waisted jeans, the tribal tattoo the size of Kansas that says Mother Love. That's a whole sleeve for 2 words. Nobody likes Queen that much. Capcom really told that character designer, make him look like Skeet Ulrich auditioning for the lead role of My Name is Earl, but give him the dumbest tattoo you can think of in your grandma's pants. And then also slap a dangly handcuff on him, I guess. Oh look, I don't know. He looks stupid. They tried really hard to make him so cool, and instead they made him look more like the guy you would let people cut in front of you in line at the gas station so you can keep your kids farther away from. Okay, I'm done bagging on Billy. Let's get to Rebecca. Rebecca, as we already know from the first game, is a member of STAR's Bravo team, whose helicopter went down in the Arklay Mountains while investigating a series of cannibalistic murders, which is what kicks off the events of the first game. All the members of Bravo team survived the crash, actually, like completely untouched. So they set out to search the area while the pilot stays back by himself to fix the helicopter. Now I know this is the first zombie outbreak they're experiencing and they don't really know it's happened yet, but I don't care what kind of special training you have. If you're investigating cannibal murders, maybe don't stay by yourself in a dark area in the woods, the same woods that the murders happened in. Regular murders, fine, I guess, but cannibal murders? No thanks. While searching the area, Rebecca finds a crashed military police vehicle, along with the bodies of 2 Marines, and a file on the prisoner they were transporting, former 2nd Lieutenant and current death row inmate, Billy Cohen. And assuming that Billy is responsible for those bodies, Bravo team splits up and starts to search the area for Billy. On her search, Rebecca finds a stalled train with the lights off, and once on board, finds it's littered with dead bodies. And then those bodies start to rise and attack her. And that's where our game starts. I know that was a little long-winded of an opening, but I felt like the whole thing needed to be included, because that shows how good of a build-up a Resident Evil game can have. It takes the game back to the basic, homaging the original, which it will do again and again later, which is kind of a pleasant surprise after such a wild change in Code Veronica. Don't worry, this one still gets very absurd. They just try to fake you out before it happens. Once you have Wesker running on the walls, you can't really go back to the normal stuff. But they did take some things other than the opening back to the basics. We're back to the pre-rendered backgrounds opposed to Veronica's 3D environments, along with the fixed cameras returning instead of the previously seen moving camera angles from Code V. But the gameplay is where they threw a few curveballs. The mainstay of tank controls are here, so there's a lot of this. The stuck-in-place aiming that auto-locks on an enemy if it's within the aiming quadrants, but never actually aims at the correct one you're trying to aim at. Or what about not being able to see what you're attacking 90% of the time? Yep, that's right, all the staples are here. But do you remember Billy? No, the murder one. Nope, neither of those. This Billy. I understand, he's a pretty forgettable Billy. Rebecca quickly runs into that Billy on the train, and he convinces her that they need to work together after he saves her life from a leech monster, cementing Billy as the second playable character for this title. But unlike all other previous entries where you play as one character and then switch to the other at the end of the game, or each character is taking different sections, you play as both characters simultaneously. And this isn't like a Code Veronica situation either, where you finish Claire's half and then do the Chris half. You can switch between Billy and Rebecca on the fly at any time, as long as the other character isn't being carried around by a giant worm or something. That's still very, very low on the absurd scale for this. We'll get there, hold on. While you're not playing as the other character, they will be controlled by an AI like any other non-player controlled character in a game. Or you can move them around with the right stick, allowing you to move both characters independently at the exact same time, which is borderline impossible to do anything of substance with. But if they're in their way, you can quickly move one out of the way without switching to them, making this one of the best features in the game. How many times have you played a game and been stuck on your partner and it's been a massive pain to actually get them moved? You just do this and then it's done. You can also command the one you aren't playing as to attack, stay, or follow you. And when a character is set to stay, you can move them to entirely different places and still switch between them in seconds. This is often used for puzzles like in the early game when one character falls through a hole in the top of the train and the other has to go get a key and send it through a dumbwaiter to the other so they can escape. Or like when one character grapple hooks through a hole in the ceiling to get to the second floor and has to deliver a charm to the other through a dumbwaiter. Now, I didn't say they were all very creative puzzles, but they're a little different from the norm. And while Zero follows other games in the series with these intricate puzzles that require finding a bunch of items and moving parts, but some of Zero's other puzzles are just as fun and difficult to figure out as those, but are simply built on figuring out what each character's role is in that specific moment, even if they do use some of the same ideas. Each character also has their own strengths and weaknesses, nudging you to use both of them depending on the situation, but never outright forces you outside of a few specific moments, like the previously mentioned worm thing. Billy is stronger, so he can take more damage than Rebecca, but he's also slower than her, while Rebecca can't take as many hits, but she's faster. Each of them also have their own special item. Billy has a lighter for lighting things and looking Cool. And Rebecca has a chemical mixing set, so she can mix herbs and such, which is a common ability that every single Resident Evil protagonist has, except for Billy. Maybe he was just bad at chemistry. We all have that subject we weren't good at. Billy's was chemistry, and mine was all of them. They both have the same amount of inventory slots, and if they're both in the same room, you can swap items between the two of them, including weapons. And this is very important because the inventory system has been completely revamped, with the magic bottomless boxes that have been a staple since the first game not being present and completely disappearing from the series for the next 15 years. But if you followed the rest of this series, then you may be wondering how you keep stock of all the things you don't need yet without filling up your inventory and not being able to pick anything else up you may need. This would make the game incredibly difficult to know when you need to pick things up because things have always disappeared when you drop them. Well, not anymore. That's what you do. You drop it. Drop everything. If you drop it, it will stay there and mark itself on the map so you can find it later, which really has some pros and also some cons. It's great to not have to travel back to that one location that's nearest to you all the time to drop things off or pick stuff up, so you can pick up that one little piece of ammo or whatever you need. But it can also be even more of a walk because you can leave something you need way back at the beginning of an area and have to backtrack a mile instead of just looking for the nearest save room. Once you realize this, it kind of causes a little ritual of finding safe central areas to drop all of your stuff at, and you'll start backtracking to the last safe area to collect all of your stuff so you can move it to a general area a little closer to you, doing however many laps it takes to get all your stuff to the new place. So you can do it all again in about an hour or so you find another safe area a little closer to what you're doing. It's a good idea, but I wish it was a little more of a Hannah Montana situation, because I want the best of both worlds here. I want to be able to drop stuff and put it in the box. Sometimes I just want to pick up a lot of junk I don't need and I need a place to put it so that I have it. But let's get into the plot because we have 3 other much bigger games to cover this week, and we got a lot to cover in the story department. Of course, that whole thing I talked about in the beginning about Rebecca finding the car with the Marines and the train and Billy, all of that happened. But before that was going on, I left out the part where the train is going down the tracks and this long-haired guy on a mountain does some singing, and leeches attack the train and kill everyone on them. And then all that other stuff happened and we're caught up. After Billy and Rebecca do decide to work together, they see a man on a mountain surrounded by leeches, belting out an opera song. Billy and Rebecca come across an Umbrella security team towards the engine of the train, which we find out have been tasked to move the train by Albert Wesker, the main antagonist of the first game, who we saw return in Code Veronica X, and William Birkin, who we saw turn into G in 2. But this is well before all of that. And the Umbrella security guys get attacked by some leeches and die, leaving the train with no one to operate it. So Billy and Rebecca are forced to split up and control the brakes on both the front and rear of the train. But sadly, they don't get the train stopped fast enough and it crashes through a cliff into an underground train station. Billy and Rebecca escape the train station to what is discovered to be an old Umbrella training facility that looks a little bit familiar. And in that facility, they come across some evidence of Dr. James Marcus's biological weapons research. And then we cut to Birkin and Wesker watching their movements through security cameras. But that singing guy from the mountain earlier, turns out he sings opera, and he hijacks the feed to accuse Birkin and Wesker of betraying Marcus and contaminating the Arclay laboratories. While Billy and Rebecca explore the training facility, they uncover evidence of Marcus using children as test subjects for biological weapon research, ending with them being turned into zombies. Then the opera man notices Rebecca while her and Billy are split up because one of them went through a hole in the ceiling, and then the opera man attacks her by freeing this game's second new enemy after the leeches, the Eliminators, which is just an angry white monkey. While fighting off the monkey, Rebecca falls down a hole, imagine that, and Billy has to save her, prompting her to demand Billy to tell her what he actually did to become a death row inmate. So Billy agrees to come clean and tell her what he did. He tells her that he was searching for a guerrilla base in an African jungle. Due to faulty intel, they came across an innocent village, but the soldiers decided to slaughter the village anyway. Except for Billy. He refused to join them, so they used him as a scapegoat, and he took the fall for all of those murders. And while Billy is telling that story, Birkin and Wesker come up with a plan to kill Opera Man, who they now believe is Dr. James Marcus brought back to life, so they activate the facility's self-destruct device to blow up the training facility with him in it. Billy and Rebecca then proceed to a laboratory found under a church church, they once again split up, and Rebecca finds human remains preserved in a fluid-filled capsule, along with harvested organs and an overfilled morgue and gas chamber. Downstairs, Billy checks the study to find a photograph of young Dr. Marcus, who looks exactly like Opera Man. How many more times should I just run that bit right into the ground? Billy and Rebecca meet up and try to leave the lab through an underground cable car, but they get attacked by more eliminators. Remember the white monkeys from earlier? And one of them attacks Billy and knocks him off a ledge. Rebecca travels on her own to find Billy and ends up at the nearby chemical plant, which brings her to an elevator that takes her to Nest, which is Birkin's lab from the second game. There she meets up with Enrico from Bravo Team, who tries to get Rebecca to escape with him, but she refuses because she won't leave Billy behind. And shortly after that confrontation, she's attacked by a tyrant. Rebecca fights a tyrant, and then less than 24 hours later, gives Chris Zero warning that they exist. Rebecca then heads towards the stream of water and finds Billy floating down the current and saves him. Together they explore the nearby water treatment plant, where they come face to face with Opera Man. Okay, that's the last one. And then he reveals that he is the Queen Leech, a mutant test subject created by Marcus, who was killed by Umbrella, and Birkin and Wesker are tasked with stealing the research data. Marcus's body was then dumped in the water, which also reveals that Umbrella has been dumping waste in the water, contaminating the leeches for years. The Queen Leech entered Marcus's body, consuming his brain and gaining his memories, which makes the Queen Leech see itself as Marcus reincarnated. Then the Queen Leech transforms into a giant leech monster, because this is Resident Evil, and it fights Billy and Rebecca. They end up escaping to the training facility from earlier and fight the Marcus monster again in a warehouse.
Hey, Queenie! Feast on this!
And then they knock him down an elevator shaft and the building blows up because this is Resident Evil. Rebecca and Billy escape, and looking out from a cliff, Rebecca sees the mansion that Enrico had told her about and now knows where she needs to go. But also knowing that Billy will have to be detained and sent for execution for the murders that he didn't commit, Rebecca takes his dog tags and declares him as dead. And he agrees to faking his own death and walks out into the forest alone, probably get killed by zombies anyways. And that is Resident Evil 0, the kickoff to this year's RE-ween. If you missed last year's event, make sure you come back tomorrow for 4 straight days of Resident Evil videos. I'll be back tomorrow with one more of those. So make sure you subscribe so you can see when that video is uploaded. And also go ahead and do the like and comment thing too if you want. Tell me if you like Resident Evil 0, or even if you knew about it. It's kind of like the one in the series that nobody even really cares about. Also, don't forget to swing by Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time and catch a stream. I'm still playing through the entire Tony Hawk series from beginning to end, and if you can't make it to one of those, the VODs are always up immediately after. But I've got work to do on the next video, so I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me on this year's premiere. I'm really excited to get through the rest of these. I had so much fun doing this last year, even if it did run me into the ground. So while you wait for tomorrow's video, go play Resident Evil 0.